Everyone, welcome to the Voice of the Microsoft Partner. I want to say thank you so much for coming today. You know, we use this as a platform to learn, right? To learn from the best and the brightest folks that are outside of Microsoft, inside of Microsoft. We've had several Microsoft speakers, you know, the IoT with Helene Cohen. We had Andrew Relf, we had Allison Salter, but we've also brought in some visionaries. Today, our main speaker is Jerod Powell, and he's actually being focused right now. Jerod, if you just want to kind of wave your hand there. Awesome. We've had him on in the past, but the beauty of this whole scenario today is he's going to bring us, he actually left the IT industry and became a CIO, you know, of this, of a major publicly traded healthcare organization. And what a better way. I mean, we're so delighted. We're very lucky, actually, to be able to get access to type of a different way of looking at like hiring an MSP, right? We always talk about that kind of thing, but not necessarily get that right information. So today we're going to get a lot of great details out of this. You're going to leave with a lot of stuff. You know, I think a different way of approaching. So there's a lot of gotchas. You know, there's a lot of things that we probably do as an MSP or as an account executive, as a seller, right, that are going out there and we're pitching to healthcare and manufacturing, you know, whatever is going on, and we make mistakes. And I think today is going to be eye-opening. When Jerod and I went over the conversation and went over the you know, some of the questions and the answers, I was like startled. I was like, wow, you know, I didn't think of that. Wow, you know, I didn't notice this, or I assumed a bunch of things, which I think is going to be really fantastic. So you will leave with a much better understanding, maybe how to pitch this to your clients. So let me just go ahead and advance this. We'll do our introduction video, and then we'll get right into it.
Hey, Sherman, you forgot to share your audio.
One moment. I am so sorry. We had a little technical difficulty. I didn't share my audio with our intro video. So let me go ahead and, there you go. You can hear now?
Yep.
All right, that's our one thing to let you know who we are and what we do. We have the agenda today. We're going to talk a little bit about WinWire. We want to kind of just share something that we've been doing that we've really found a lot of great thinking, and I think you'll be able to take some good stuff out of that. We're going to our first one will be the migration. We're going to talk to Jerod about like we made the switch. Then we're going to get into hiring an MSP. What are the thoughts? What are the thinking behind it? How did we start the search? You know, how did you find a partner? You know, what were the pros? What were the cons? And then we're going to talk about the winner today, which is going to be awesome. We're going to talk about why he picked the winner, and we're actually announcing who that company was, and we're going to give them some good press on here. And I saw the representative from the organization. He's in there. He's already here. We didn't tell them we were going to say that, but we're going to do it because they really brought it. They really brought some really incredible ways of thinking and going about it. And then we'll just do some wrap up right after that. So let's go ahead and get into the WinWire. And the first thing that I always talk about is, you know, dreamers talk about what they're going to do. You know, leaders do what they talk about, right? And ask yourself every day, and this is what I do every morning. I ask myself, am I a dreamer today or am I a leader today? I have so many conversations with people, you know, that are saying, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to be this and I'm going to have this $1 million business in X, Y, and Z. But did they actually ever have the guts? Did they ever have the moxie to say, you know something, I'm going to stop talking about it. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I'm just going to jump. A lot of people don't want to jump into that fire, you know, and I think, you know, our business, you know, in 15 months, 15 months since I left Microsoft, we now have 10 full-time employees. Just think what the run rate is on that. I don't get into certain things, but we've grown exponentially. We understand things. But what I want to talk about first is working on the business. What we did recently, back I think when Inspire was going on, it was the only week that we had a few days to actually do something, because we do the Azure immersion workshops for the Microsoft US subsidiary. So we have to do 36 of these a month. We don't have time. We've got all these CIEs we're doing, all this stuff, but there's really not enough time. And I think a lot of us do this every day. We work inside of it, or we work inside the business. We're always doing stuff. And what we found coming up to July is my utilization rate was through the roof. We're redlining, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're reacting, we're not being proactive, and we're not taking a look at it. So what we decided to do was actually take 3 days, just 3 days, or well, 3.5 days. We flew in everybody from around the country. All 10 people came in, and we sat there for 3 days. And what we did first was, okay, let's present the business on the first day. And we took all of our business units and we said, okay, I want everybody to present the business. I want you to tell us what you do, why you do it, what are the win wires. Let's understand it. Let's understand the business. The second day is where we decided to take hubris out of our, hubris, or I guess that's the best way of taking about it. We're very not malleable, but what is the term? We're not. I hate to say the cocky, but what we wanted to do on the second day was tear the business down. Okay, and what we did, we literally spent 8 hours going through the whole business, the MSP side of the business, the learning side of the business we have, and an ISV side that we're looking at, trying to figure out. And we literally said, okay, what's wrong with everything, right? What's wrong? And we spent 9 hours literally going over, just finding all the wrong things that we were doing. And a lot of times it wasn't wrong, but it's like, well, what are the processes? And then we did on the third day was, okay, what do we do to build up the business now again? So, we wanted to look at, okay, over the next 3 months, what we're going to be going to do is we're going to go ahead and create run books and processes for everything to make sure that we can be a lot more organized. But we also want to talk about scheduling and the amount of hours that we put into for every single partner. And let me ask you this, Andres, we came out with a couple really interesting things from that. What would you say is probably the most interesting one, or because we looked at our partners too, like what was working, what wasn't working with our partners? What did we find, and then what was the solution that we came up with? And this is what I really want to share, because this was important, because we figured something out. So Andres, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely appreciate the time here. So, I think the first thing that you realize when we just take a step back is you get a chance to see how far you've come. I'm just going to highlight that first. It's been a great ride. It's been really fun. And I think it really forces you to think about the decisions that you've been making, for an extended period of time now. I mean, Sherman, it's actually not, I don't think 16 months. I think it's now almost 2 years at this point. Anyways, point being, there's been a lot of decisions, a lot of different ways that we've set up the way that we engage with partners. And so, what we've been able to really understand is, okay, what value are we bringing to our customer base? And that's something that we've always really tried to highlight. And, since we've started, we've been making pivots constantly, trying to really progress that forward. The CIE has always been a fundamental piece of that. Now, we noticed with certain partners, those who were able to drive attendance, those who maybe struggled with it, you could see some significant differences in terms of their approach to the program. And I think we wanted to take that potential risk point out of the conversation. And so one of the things we've been focusing heavily on now is finding a way to drive opportunities, drive people to these sessions ourselves, right? So now at this point, moving forward, after that long conversation, really breaking down what we're doing, we decided that moving forward, our project lead gen, where we're driving attendance to these sessions, is going to be a part of every single customer engagement that we have, right? We're starting them there, even in our lowest package, because it's something that, I really think could be way more beneficial over the long term, because now we can guarantee, right, every session that we have, we're bringing 30 to 36 people who are registering. We're bringing 12 to 18 people who are actually showing up, and we're driving 3 to 4 opportunities each time. And we can streamline that. We can track it. we can have numbers behind the actual process and follow up with the partner to make sure that we're taking the steps to be as successful with those leads as possible. So, it's thinking out of the box a little bit, understanding the value that we're pushing forward, and then aligning that with what we're capable of is, I think, why this, step back and working on the business as opposed to in the business was so successful. I loved it. It was great. Plus, I got to stay at the hotel for a few days, right? That doesn't hurt either.
Yeah. That was pretty cool. And just on top of that, so we noticed that some of our partners, the first 2 or 3 months, they're able to fill up the CIE seats because it's so important, right? But then after that, it became a struggle. So we use a content syndication marketing company, and we target. This is what we do. So the customer persona is so incredibly important here, right? It's just so darn important. And what we do now is we target customers that are $5 to $50 million in revenue. Okay, we're looking for customers that have AWS or Google but do not have Azure. But we're also looking for customers who have indicated an interest, downloaded a white paper for a multi-cloud strategy. Okay, and then we deliver these CIEs. But then on top of that, we also use the Azure POC offer, which is amazing. Everybody here should be using it. This is not just for net new customers. It's for current customers now as well. So anytime you want to do a POC with a customer, it's great. So when we're targeting these companies, they're coming in, they're learning about Azure, they're learning about Sentinel, Microsoft 365, and then we come back, and this is the most important piece. You have to have a compelling offer at the end of every scenario for them to bite. Right, to them to bite, to get to that next scenario. Otherwise, what are we doing this for? The last thing we figured out too, and I want to make sure that we mention this to everybody. You need to turn into a professional sales organization. One of the I think the atrophies that we have inside of our industry is if you look at a typical MSP of 20 people, you have 18 engineers there. You have 1 marketing and you have 1 seller, right? The CEO. It's a lot. You'd be surprised how spot on this is. And, how they've done customer acquisition? Well, it's usually the I'm on fire method, right? Somebody's on fire, they give you a call, it's a referral, I got them, perfect, that's how I acquired a customer. But you really don't have the things in place, the processes in place to run a professional sales organization. And that's what's really important, is having all those processes. What do you do after a customer immersion experience? Do you take those 36 leads? What are the things that you put in place? What are the nurturing campaigns, right? What do we do right afterwards? Do we send an appointment calendar invite? Do we send a find time? These all have to be put together and put into processes, and you have to do that. And then you have to, lastly, if you don't have a CRM or you're not tracking your stuff to a CRM and creating your Power BI and your business intelligence, your analytics after these people, oh my gosh, you're really missing the boat here. And I think that's what we really need to really work on. All right. So that's really what's build the business. We're going to land the plane here. And so let me go ahead. I'm going to close that out. Let's go ahead and get into the next section, okay, which is the migration section, okay? I'm just going to kind of, just post this really quickly here. It's the migration. And we're doing this because we want to be able to cut this up to give you guys easy content, the migration. All right. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and spotlight our guest in just a moment. Take a little thing here. All right. So the migration. So let's get into this thing. Okay. Let's get into it. Jerod, thanks so much for coming. Maybe you want to make a shout out to somebody that's special here. Go ahead. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. We need to unmute you.
Whoops, sorry, I'm muted. It's funny how often I talk to myself on Teams. Fantastic. But no, hi, Mom. I think it's funny that you joined. No pressure or anything, but it's cool. But yeah, love you, Mom. Thanks for joining. Hope you get something out of this.
Awesome. So the first thing is we have 3 questions inside here, and this is the migration. So Jerod has come from IT. He had Infinite Consulting, built it, made it huge, sold it. What are you going to do? And then he decided to take a thing. So tell us a story of the transition from a Microsoft partner to a healthcare CIO of a publicly traded company. So he's not just a CIO for namesake, but it's a publicly traded company. This is big. Tell us about the story of the transition.
I'm still scratching my head on how it all happened, to be honest. But no, I spent a year woodworking basically after I sold my company, and just kind of doing the due diligence, making sure my employees and stuff are taken care of after the sale and all that. But obviously I did well. in that transaction. And so I wasn't honestly even looking for a job. But one of my customers I'd worked with, 15 or 16 times over the years, it became CFO of the company I'm at now, and reached out, and they were having some problems with some business intelligence, and asked if I could come in and help shore some of that up. And so I was like, sure, I'll do a quick consulting gig, and came in and did that. And I guess I knocked it out of the park, which of course I did, because that's sort of what I do. But they offered me the CIO job, and honestly, after a year of woodworking, as much as I thought I wanted out of tech, I still love tech. And I thought, this would be really interesting, in that my entire IT career, I've never actually worked for a single organization. I've always been a consultant. So I guess technically you could qualify Microsoft as working for a single company, but not really, because I was doing consulting on MSN accounts and billing at the time, back in the late 90s. And so, and helping to transition that to a new billing platform. And so not even really then did I focus on a single company, a single IT. And so I was like, you know what? I think I want to do this. And I think that I want to see if I can use the skills that I've acquired over the years to help go out and transform an industry, which is really what they were their expectations of me, was to come in and leverage the power of data, AI, deep learning, machine learning, to help go in and do something different in this industry that is really, quite frankly, stalled out a little bit. And in the line of business we're in, margins are very thin also. And so I think that it's ripe for disruption. And so I want to see if I can do that. So here I am,
And that's a great answer, because it seems like it's so overly complicated, right? With all these systems, all these different things that the hospitals have put together are coming in, right? Different sign-ins and different data points. And in my opinion, it's just like, wow. And you're right. I think there is a real opportunity here. And we were even talking about like some ideas right before the call started, like, oh, think about this, oh, wait a minute, we could do that. Let me ask you this. So what were some of your reservations, pre-existing thoughts, of making the transition? I mean, what do you, maybe coming in, like, what was your, okay, I'm a CIO, what, this is what I'm going to do. Help us understand that.
Well, I don't know that I had any reservations. I've always kind of felt like, I was the CIO of hundreds of companies when I ran MSP, so I thought it was going to be a walk in the park. Huh? It's not been my experience, I'll tell you that. And that was a little bit of a rude awakening. I think that there's this whole litany of stuff that a CIO does, especially in a public company, that MSPs don't really get exposure to necessarily. And so it's not been nearly as easy as I thought. I thought, I'll come in and I'll just crush this and I'll walk on water, so on and so forth. And I'll be honest, I've had to put forth maximum effort. And it's not that I'm falling behind. I could do the job, but there was definitely a lot more to it than I thought. I wasn't sure I still wanted to be in tech. I was a little bit soured by tech, I think, over the years. 15 years running an MSP will wear you out. I don't care who you are on some level. And I'll be honest, I was worn out. When I sold it, I was ready to sell it, and I didn't think I'd ever do tech again. But somewhere along the line, I did realize, I love tech. I just didn't necessarily love the MSP industry anymore. And that I wanted, and I think sometimes you don't get to go as deep as you want to go as an MSP. You do have opportunities to do so, but at the end of the day, you're kind of taking care of this foundational infrastructure, right? I want to do all the stuff above the foundational infrastructure, right? And go in and make an impact to an overall industry. And so I think that becoming a CIO gives you that opportunity, right? To go as deep into technology as you want to. And so that's what got me kind of excited and you got me to sign the deal. It was also a good offer. So, there is that, so.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So Eric, great. Yeah, we got some people putting some questions in. I want to encourage other people to please go ahead and put some questions in. We'd be happy to kind of work that in here.
Yeah, I am the CISO also. So just FYI, we're still a smaller company. I'll eventually maybe hire one or become a CISO, but my background is security, so I don't need one currently. I got that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So let me ask you this. So when you made the transition, in here, what were the first things that you decided to focus on, or what was the directive you were given to start with?
Well, they brought me in to honestly help disrupt and transform the industry. And that if you look at the industry we're in, there's a finite amount of growth in it. So your options to growth are buy all your competition. But even if you do that, the insurance industry and their way that they pay claims and stuff is so convoluted and crazy. I mean, they'll pay you some money and then 10 months later come back and take half of it back because they overpaid you, and there's nothing you can really do about it. And so they really do kind of rule that world with an iron fist. And so it's a very thin margin game at the end of the day. So go buy all your competition, but the amount of payments are going down and trending down on claim payments. And so you kind of have a ceiling of growth, right? And so how do we take that ceiling off? And I think that you do that with technology. And so I was brought into, number one, we're doing acquisitions left and right. So we've already done like 3 or 4. We have many, many more in the pipe. In fact, we got a lot in the pipe. Let's just put it that way. And so a lot of what my focus will be is automation and a blueprint to come in and structure a way that we absorb other companies and make it very simple for them to just be onboarded, which I've done most of my career. I kind of got my start in M&A, and I would go in and integrate companies about other companies and had a whole plan for that. So that will be honestly pretty easy. Honestly, the templates I used 10 years ago are still largely relevant in a lot of ways, in that it's all about your due diligence and then just having a formula for how do you take them from A to B, right? And I think that a lot of that is having I'm just going to use the balls to dictate how it's going to be done and say you're going from here to there, right, at the end of the day. And so that's what we're going to do. And so that part's kind of locked down. But the other component of that is how do we leverage the power of data, which we have a ton of data. We have so much data that it's probably hard for some people to fathom how much data we have, but it's a lot. How do we leverage that to go out and disrupt this industry, right? And I'll be perfectly honest, getting my head around that. I'm no expert in the medical field. I'm around all these doctors and PhDs, and oftentimes I'll be honest, I feel like the dumbest person in the room, and that they're talking about stuff I know literally, close to zero about. but I will say that I'm a month and a half in, and I had a brilliant idea like 2 days ago that I pitched, and it's got legs, and I can see it. I can see a path for it clearly that we do have an opportunity to go in and disrupt this industry. And I think that we're going to give that a shot, and it'll start with a POC, but, I think I'll get the runway to do that. And if we pull that off, then we're going to be off to the races. So that it's exciting, it's exciting.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, okay, let's go ahead and transition over here to selecting an MSP. Let's get to the heart of this. And so we got 2 really good questions while I'm kind of doing this here. Kevin McMillan, who actually is our next speaker next year, and we'll talk about this in a minute. This is Jerod. Did you find that your knowledge is being one of the most successful MSPs for Microsoft Partner Network actually hindered you when trying to select an MSP for the new company that brought you on? How do you separate what you know from the back end getting in the way, like pricing, profits, and path? I think that's a good way to just kind of start this out.
It's a great question, and I'll be totally honest. I had to shelve my ego a little bit because at first, I think when I started out, I was comparing them to what my company did, what Infinite did, and of course, nobody's as great as your baby that you raised, and so I think that to a certain extent, some of the MSPs that I was interviewing were like, I knew too much about the back end. I knew the margins. I knew everything there was to know about that industry, right? I mean, I've been in it for 15 years. And I think that was rough. But once I backed off that and focused on what was important, I think that it was a benefit ultimately to the MSP that I hired, because I get the fact that we need to have spares in inventory, right, of laptops. And I understand that you need to make margin when we roll out a new PC. And I understand why you don't want to sell me PCs and that you need to make this or that. And I understand a lot of things intrinsic to your business that you need to get the right value for the job that you're providing. And I need to get the right value for the job that you're doing. But it was my job to make sure I got the right value out of the job you were doing. And so that's what when I got my head kind of clear and focused on make sure that you get the right value for Assure and that they get the right value for what they're doing. And then it becomes a very amicable situation and everybody's happy. I mean, that's what you're striving for in every MSP contract, right? Is it's amicable. Everybody gets a win-win. You want a win-win. You're paying the right amount, they're getting the right value, they're getting the right margin, and then everybody stays happy, right? And so I focused on really achieving that outcome at the end of the day, and I think we got there for sure. I think we got there. I mean, we're pretty new in our relationship, but it's going good so far, So.
Wow. I think who you selected is fantastic. So let's do this. I think what a lot of people want to think about. Okay, I think this first question is, what is the initial set of criteria that you had when starting your search? And it's very interesting. I'm telling you guys, this is so cool. You're not going to think this is the way he thought about it, but go ahead.
Well, to a certain extent, I had one limitation in that they really needed to be a Denver-based MSP, and that we have a large office here and I needed local presence. But I also needed to make sure that they had the scale and ability to deliver on-site services anywhere in the continental U.S. Because we have literally employees in every single state in the continental U.S. And yeah, that's going to be one-offs. I didn't really care if they use Field Nation or whatever, because it's just going to be, most of those outside of the Denver area is going to be something like that, right? So whatever. Just that they could think that way, they were open-minded and they were being flexible there. So obviously you eliminate, everybody that's not in Denver. So then I went online and I searched for who was the best MSP in Denver, right? And I used MSP 500. I used, what are their certifications? Do they have cloud platform? Do they have cloud productivity? What Microsoft Gold partnerships do they have? And that was important to me because those aren't necessarily easy to obtain. They require certain revenue levels now. And so to get Gold in cloud platform, you got to be producing, right? So just by that in and of itself will show me that you have some exposure and experience there. And what is their relationship with Microsoft? Are they kind of continually highlighted as a decent partner? And I have enough connections into Microsoft that I could glean that information. And then, I read employee reviews, Glassdoor, to be honest, on a lot of them. And so you don't always get great stuff there, but I'll tell you what, you get unfiltered feedback there 100%. And anybody that doesn't think so, I guarantee you that your clients are going out and reading Glassdoor to see how you're treating your employees and seeing if they like you. That was important to me because if your techs aren't happy, then you have a shitty organization that's not working very well for you. It's just the fact of the matter is, if you treat your employees right, they're going to work harder. And so that was important. But some of the things that really kind of surprised me that was how the marketing material was, right? Did you have clean marketing material? Did you take the time to name a product, right? Instead of just package up a bunch of Office 365 products and this or that and everything, that you named the product, that you took the time to think methodically through how you're going to lay out your packages. You made them very clear and easy to understand, that your focus was on really a fixed price, because, a CIO, I have to come with a budget. I can't have that change very much. So I don't want to get surprises, right? And if I get surprises, that could potentially cost me my job. And so that actually made a bigger difference than I thought. And the only reason I guess I weighted that as heavily as I did is I know at Infinite, we painstakingly created our marketing and created packages and relentlessly figured out what the pricing needed to be. And that was a lot of friggin' work, And I think if you're willing to go through that pain, then a lot of other stuff behind the scenes is going to be right in your organization. And so I weighted that a lot heavier than I thought I would. I did, a lot of times I think the MSP kind of looks at that and go, yeah, it doesn't matter. It matters. I guarantee you that you've lost clients if your marketing is not tight. I guarantee it. Just because that's kind of your first exposure to the company. That's their face, right? Here's this quote or here's this package, and it has to be right. But the other things that became very important to me very quickly were, I think about myself and I'm going to be transparent, kind of even throw myself under the bus a little bit. But in the last few years in Infinite, I lost the wind in my sales. I was a little bit burnt out, and I wasn't as fully engaged in my business as I was. And to put that in perspective, I grew my revenue $1 million a year from 2015, 2016, 2017. And then I kind of checked out and I lost $1 million in revenue in 2018. And that tells you about everything you need to know about an owner being invested in their company and participating in it. I tried to make a change and it didn't work out very well. And I ended up, getting enough energy to come back in 2019 and kind of help right the ship a little bit, at least enough to get the thing sold. But so I was leery of that. I wanted the owner of the MSP to be engaged in that MSP. And if they were not, they were off the list, period, because I just don't know how it's such a personal business, and the owner has to truly care about the clients on some level. And I'm not just a paycheck to them. And so I was looking for that. And ultimately the person that I selected, the reason why I selected them was because the owner took the time to meet with me to understand my business needs. And he understood something that was very critical, the most critical, I think, aspect of it all. And it's the gravity of the MSP's responsibility. At the end of the day, it's not my job that's just on the line. It's the livelihood of every single one of our employees. If they fuck up, we're out, right? They could put us out of business by letting some cybersecurity thing through if they're not doing their job, right? I don't think a lot of MSPs truly understand the level of responsibility they have, to their clients. And so it was very important that they understood that.
So, and that's all great points. I think we can learn a lot from that. But I want to go back just a little bit, back to the marketing pieces. We that's the core to our business with every one of our partners is package creation, and also vertical package creation. Stop trying to just be everything to everyone because everybody's doing it, right? Stop having the same exact website because everybody's got the same exact website. And don't just, and this is a problem, I think, in our industry, is that we don't put enough emphasis in marketing. We don't put enough emphasis in who we are and what and how we come across, how professional, the knowledge base, whatnot. And we don't. And you're right. I mean, it's. I see a lot of partners' websites. I'm like, oh my Lord, if somebody clicked on this, you're automatically losing, right? And now you're getting this from a CIO because this is how they're looking. So let me go back a little bit. How did you find? Okay, because this is interesting. What are the and this is very interesting when you told me about it. How did you find? But you said that you interviewed 30, about 30 MSPs, right? So you really did this. How did you find them? What was your?
Well, Uncle Google, same way I find everything. But at the end of the day, Google best MSPs in Denver, and then I checked out the MSP 500 or 501 or whatever it is, and picked out the Denver MSPs that were on that. I searched for then I looked at websites. So I searched Google for Denver local partners. I saw what competencies they had. I have a massive network of MSPs. Obviously, I was a cloud champion. And so guys like Kevin and John, out in New York and some of these guys, I know a lot of MSPs. So I reached out to them, hey, who's high performing there? And then I use the vendor angle too. So you have all these security companies the MSPs are signing up for. I have connections into ConnectWise. I ask them who are your top performing partners in the Denver area. And then I assimilated a list. So here we go. And then I have my list. And then I reached out to them. Very few even made the first cut. I'll be honest. I hate to say it, but there's just a lot of, I think, MSPs out there that don't get the gravity of the situation. They don't get that the livelihood of that company is in your hands to a certain extent. They don't get that you have to know what you're doing in order to play this game. And so they just get off the list. A lot did, and a lot did it well. And then it boiled down to the finer details. And I think that, my short list, probably any of them would have been fine, to be honest. And then it came down to personal preference. Who you like? Who did I gel with more? Let's face it, to a certain extent, a relationship with MSP is a personal relationship that you want to develop. And who do you like the best, right? And, I want them to be sort of my friend. At the end of the day, I view an MSP as they work for me, right? They might as well be part of my organization, and I hired them, and that's how I want my company to view them, because the best MSP relationships is that MSP is viewed as an employee of the company almost. They're viewed as part of the team. And when you can make that scenario work and they are viewed as part of the team, you have a very successful MSP contract that's going to go on for a very, very long time. And so I wanted that resonance and that camaraderie with the team, right? And so that went into it too. And that's those were the finer points as you're kind of narrowing it down. And I will say one of the things that I think MSPs need to understand, I think about the contracts I lost, and I think oftentimes it was not staying excited enough, not putting in that extra mile effort, not trying to be likable, necessarily. Like you have to just continue to keep your foot on the gas until that deal is closed. And I think a few times I probably let off the gas, and I lost the deal, even though it was probably I had it well in hand, and then I got, the sales cycle's going too long or whatever, less excited about the deal. And then poof, it was gone because somebody else put in just that 10% of effort you weren't willing to,
So that's great. I mean, I think, the whole Glassdoor thing, the sling, there's those sites. That's interesting, right? I think the package creation being really tight when the marketing, you got in there, you're like, okay, they really understood who they are, their identity, their differentiation, maybe is vertical centric, right? I think those are really good.
I guess I left a few things out too. In my case, somebody that understood the Microsoft security stack was of the utmost importance, as well as actually understood cybersecurity at a deep level. And that's something, as you know, Sherman, my background is in security. And ultimately, it was one of the ways I got my company sold is creating a security tool. But a lot of MSPs, they tried to fake it and act like they knew it, but they just didn't. And you can determine within pretty rapidly whether somebody knows it or does not know it. And so that was critical. And then I also, due to the nature of our business, you think about having employees spread across the country and how you deploy desktops and laptops. And we're not just remote, we're spread out everywhere. And we only have one central office, so we don't have offices all over the country. So I wanted somebody that knew autopilot and knew it all the way, right? We're experts in autopilot. And ultimately the company I selected had built automations into autopilot and done all sorts of cool hooks into HR and onboarding to automate those processes. And that shows a deep understanding of the tool, right? And there was just no question that not only did they understand it, they were experts in it. And that made a huge difference to me. And nobody that's ever experienced autopilot and how that works, holy crap, man. You want to make your life simpler? I suggest you learn it.
So let's talk a little bit more about that, because when when we talked about it, we were talking about the MSPs that you were looking at, and you were surprised at certain MSPs' knowledge of the Microsoft stack. And Kevin actually made a really good point here. He asked a question: do you find that an MSP that uses Microsoft stack only is just as valuable as one that specializes in cloud across providers? But let's get back to, remember we talked about, like, okay, you interviewed a few folks, and then you had folks that were saying they knew something, but they really didn't. And because you came from it, so can you kind of extrapolate on that, like how you viewed a partner that may have said they knew it, but you really realize they don't know it? Like, help me understand.
The proof is in the pudding. At the end of the day, with somebody like me, I'm going to put you to the test. And so you better be able to answer the questions. So don't send your sales, excuse my terminology, but your sales bitch boy out there to try and sell me on the contract. Then you better send a heavy hitter that can answer the questions that I need to have answered. And anybody that is obviously off the list. Those are mostly going to be PE firms, to be honest. They're sending out their sales lackeys to come out and try and just close a deal, because they're all about volume and not about quality and production, in my opinion. And so that's why I wanted an owner involved in his business, because those guys have the engineers that have the chops that I wanted to work for my company at the end of the day. And I don't think the PE maybe is always like that, but just in my experience, almost everyone I talked to that was PE owned was more concerned about the dollars of the contract than about me, right, as the customer. And they try to give you this cookie cutter thing. So maybe they're going to do an outsourced SOC, and maybe the security is going to be okay, but I don't want that. I mean, at the end of the day, I can go to jail for a HIPAA violation, right? So I need somebody that knows what they're doing, period. And there can't be any question of that. And so I flat put them to the test. How do you configure this? How do you configure that? Do you even know what this is? And you can tell in a few questions whether somebody actually knows a technology and has been there and has even touched it or looked at it or not. And oftentimes, I'll be honest, the majority of partners don't know shit about the Microsoft security stack that I interviewed. I mean, probably less than 10%.
And that's what I wanted to talk about. I mean, that's what I wanted to highlight, is the fact that, yeah, you had talked to a bunch of Microsoft partners, but they didn't have, a good enough experience in the Microsoft in the security stack. They really didn't know. They just like, okay, well, maybe a little bit of Microsoft 365, right? A little bit. Let me talk about, multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, right? They surface, but they really don't get it. And I think that was what really helped you understand, like, no, I want a company that really gets it, because especially in your industry, because you're publicly traded, holy smokes, you have to have your security figured out, right? You have to have that in place. And it's so interesting with that. Let me go back. Let's talk about we actually put a poll up here. Who do you send? Who do you send to your first appointment? And what I really liked about it was you talked about having the owner involved and the PE, the private equity, and the
at least somebody was skin in the game. It doesn't necessarily have to be the owner, but they better be up there, right? I want to talk to a big dog at the end of the day, right? I wasn't a small contract, Sherman. We're talking 30 G's a month without Microsoft licensing, just to begin with, on a company that's scaling and doing acquisitions. So you send your big dog out to that account, and any MSP that's so big that doesn't send their big dog to that, I guess congratulations. But I was never big enough not to. Guaranteed 30G contract come across my desk, I'm going, me personally.
And I love that. I think the winner, of the contract, really, they were really involved with you from the beginning to the end. They didn't just send somebody to say, hey, oh yeah, let's talk about this. It did not have the acumen or the understanding of why, what, when, where they need to do that. And that's, a lot of us lose. A lot of us lose because we're sending the wrong people out. Right? We have this opportunity. If somebody's setting a meeting with you, that is a sales qualified lead. They're interested and they need you to know. And you're auditioning, right? They're auditioning when they're coming to you. They're auditioning. That's really what you're doing. You're showing. You want to make friends, but you need to show them that, hey, you have an understanding of this, but the latest and greatest. And I'll give you an example. Like for my team, everybody in my office right now is getting Azure Fundamentals, Azure Power Platform, and Azure Security Fundamentals certifications by the end of this quarter. And then they're going to get the actual, architectures, right? Because we need to be in front and center on the top stuff. AI, excuse me, that was the third one. It was actually Microsoft AI Fundamentals. We're all going to be experts at this because you need to be. You need to be front ahead of it.
I will say, too, certifications were somewhat important to me. Like,
okay,
it wasn't necessarily that I dictated that they have it, but I think that, number one, the certifications have gotten, I think, harder to get, and I've taken most of them. So I was always one of those dog food guys. So as a CEO of the company, I probably had more certifications than anybody in my company. Let's put it that way, by far. And then I just always kind of just continually kept up on the tech, and they're not that easy to pass anymore. So you have to know at least a reasonable amount of stuff in order to go in and pass one of those tests. You don't just go get an exam cram deal and just go take the test and pass it anymore necessarily. You have to know a little bit about it. And so that was important because number one, it shows that the company's all investing in their employees. And that was important to me because as an MSP, you have a responsibility to your employees to make sure you're invested in their futures, right? Whether it's with you or whoever, right? And I always try to do that. And they're your lifeblood. And so that was important. And then just also, I think that once we even got down to closing the deal, well, a couple other things were important. Transparency in the things that they don't know or wouldn't do is also important, right? Because I don't want to get surprised with a bill. I don't want a bunch of shit out of scope. I don't want all this overbilling stuff. I just want my bill to be my bill, predictable. And yeah, that can flux. Let's call it give or take 15%. I get that. So it might go up or down a little bit, but it needs to stay within in some guardrails, right? And then just transparency about here's what we don't do that you're going to have to deal with. And as long as that's clear and communicated up front, number one, it helps me do my job. It keeps you in the good graces too. There's just no questions there. And I think that the company I hired did a really good job of setting that expectation and that standard and was very honest. And here's the deal, right? Here's what we do. Like one of the points of contention actually for me were their hours of operation. And they almost lost the deal because of that. They made a change for me and made it work. And I was concerned about it, but in the back of my mind, I'm going, you ran an MSP. You don't really need these hours of operations. And I can, for that hour they're not available, I guess I'll just, email me if it's really truly an emergency or call my cell phone or whatever. For the 2 times a year that happens, I can deal with it, right? And so, but I'd much prefer that transparency on the front end than we're going to cover it and then just not do it, right? Which is what a lot of MSPs I think would do, just to try and get the deal. And so I liked that they were upfront and just said, here's the deal, man. And so that's cool.
I love that. I love the being transparent in that. So Kevin, we have another question came out here. It says, so now that you're not having to keep your opinion shut off regarding Microsoft direct sales getting into your accounts, what advice would you give MSPs to battle the direct sales reps that battle for your business? I get into this, steal your business, every day. What would you? You're coming from a different thing. What would you say?
Man, I mean, that's just a tough one. I guess at the end of the day, build a better relationship than they built. But I mean, I personally wouldn't buy it from a Microsoft direct sales representative. I mean, I knew I was going to go MSP because I know how hard you guys work, and I know that I can get a higher touch there. And that at the end of the day, I mean, I hate to say this, but I am not a partner anymore. I know that Microsoft doesn't give a crap about me at the end of the day on many levels as a customer. I'm just a number to them, and I know that MSP does. Now, they might care that they get my money, but they're not going to white glove help me with anything at the end of the day, right? And I mean, I don't know. I sold well over $1 million a year for Microsoft, and it was hard for me as a partner to get support. So how much could they truly care about their end clients? Probably not that much. But they expect the partners to care about their end clients, and that's what you guys are there for. So maybe Microsoft should just stop competing with you. Would be good, but I have no good solution for that, Kevin. And if you ever figure one out, then congratulations. But
all right, so and that's some good points there. But I do like if I was if I was to think about it, but if I was to think about it, I think the value proposition is, we specialize in the Microsoft stack, right? You're going to explain it. We specialize in the Microsoft stack. We have many different engineers that are on staff. And if you go through us with the CSP relationship, we have the highest levels of being able to upgrade. However, if you were to go directly with maybe a Microsoft executive, and that's okay, but you might have to sign a 3-year agreement, on something. And then who buys cloud on 3 years? That's the only technology in the last 10 years that has gone up in price. I don't know if anyone can answer this. Video cards. Right?
Imagine that, Bitcoin.
Yeah, but imagine that, right? So you got to be a little careful with that, right? Now on the certifications, so this is what you and I talked about. We talked about, we obviously in most organizations, the IT, the sales engineer or engineers, they're the ones that are certified.
Sure.
How about the executives? Are we finding that they know less and less and less and less? I mean, do we need to up level our executives?
The high functioning MSPs, the execs know a lot, and I will say that they're usually pretty skilled up. At a minimum, they got sales acumen too. They might not know the nitty gritty details, but they understand the tech and what it does, how it can benefit your business, and how to position it, right? And that's maybe all I'm expecting. I don't expect an exec to come in and be a rock star, technical expert, engineer level on it, but I expect them to know enough about the product they're selling to tell me the pros and cons, where it fits in my business, how what I'm doing today would be better, with it. And I think that the top performing MSPs all have that, for sure. And a good chunk of the ones I interviewed did have, that person that had that knowledge. His problem is they didn't have necessarily enough of them, or they just had like the guy, and I mean, I don't know. I'm a 200 person company and scaling. I can't have a person with the guy, right? I need somebody with the guys, or the gals or whatever. I need multiple experts. And the great ones also brought an engineer with them, especially when, if you Googled me or did any research at all on the sales cycle, which I sort of expect, that's what I did. Hey, you get a lead. Hey, here's a profound thought. Maybe you should go Google that person to see what their background is, what they do, what's their level of expertise. So you come armed to that meeting with the ability to talk to the level that they're at, right? And anybody that Googled me would see, okay, this is a guy that started the company, but is an engineer at his core and is going to be pretty technical, and you're probably going to get very technical questions, And so they brought their A team, they brought somebody that could answer those questions, that could speak to the type of stuff that I'm going to ask. And a lot of them, very few, I think 3 actually did that correctly. I will say, can I just say their name?
Yeah. You certainly can.
Machine Logic, they came armed. So they came, Dan, he definitely, from a sales perspective, he has it down. He understands tech and all that very well. Not necessarily an engineer, I don't think, although very technical for what he does. But he had an engineer on the phone that is as good or better than me, or maybe better than I ever was, to be honest. But somebody that could answer all my questions. And then the next time it was like 4 engineers that showed up, and trust me, they were able to answer all my questions and put me at ease, And they had some differentiators too, and I think these are things that maybe MSPs that are aspiring to be great should think about. But their automation platform is awesome. So
we'll get into that in just a minute. Oh, this looks like still the thunder. We'll get into that in just a minute. What I do want to kind of go back to is the contract. Oh no, actually, let me back up. I want to go. So if an MSP had knowledge of healthcare related ideas and problems and issues and et cetera, they understood that. Would they rank higher than the MSPs that came in with the shotgun approach? And how did you see that?
Well, in my case, yes, because at the end of the day, we did some healthcare stuff, but I don't know that I was necessarily an out-the-door expert in healthcare. I do know I was not an out-the-door expert in healthcare. Let's put it that way. And so I'd done some stuff in that industry, and I've done HIPAA compliance engagements, and I would say that I am a compliance and regulations expert, and that I've done a lot of that sort of thing. But I didn't know, for instance, that as a CEO, if you are considered negligent, you can go to jail or get a $250,000 fine for a HIPAA violation, for instance. And then you look at the healthcare industry, when you see these networks and the tools that you have to use, it's not necessarily that easy. So somebody with some vertical experience there certainly was of value to me. And I wouldn't say that it was rated higher than, for instance, expertise in the Microsoft security stack, because I think that we can address all that. Number one, I can read a compliance and regulations control framework and go, okay, here's how we have to go structure this to pass it, right? So big deal, like whatever, you can learn on the fly. But I did need, it's definitely a huge value. And as it turns out, these guys did have a lot of expertise there. As it turns out, a lot of the Denver area as MSPs, there's a big presence of healthcare here. And so a lot of them had some healthcare experience, but then it comes down, do you understand what the control framework is? Have you ever been through a compliance and regulation? Have you been through an audit, And I can tell you one thing, anybody that hasn't, in about a nanosecond, you can tell if they haven't, because, well, it's just obvious, because they don't get what that takes, right? And that can be a ton of work to go through some of those. And there's ways that you can make your life easier there. And a lot of that is, like, for me, I worked with the Big Four so much doing SOX consulting back in the day that I got relationships with them, set up a framework. But a lot of it comes down to scoping. And so I would ask them questions of, how do you scope your control framework, right? And things like that. And if they didn't have a good answer to that, then they probably really never done any true compliance consulting. And I do know that I need that. We have the Joint Commission that's coming, anytime, and they just can't kind of give you this random time frame that they're just going to show up and audit you, right? and we got to be ready. And so you need somebody that has some experience with that, right, to help you get through it. And again, that's potentially my job on the line if we screw that up. And it's their job on the line if they screw that up too at the end of the day. And so, hey, nobody wants a CIO change of the CIO that hired you, because you're probably fired when the new CIO comes in, because they're going to bring in whoever they like, oftentimes.
That's so true.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the winner. I know you kind of said it already, but I want you to say the name of the winner. I want to say who you started talking with. We got somebody on here. We're going to give them the press on this, and I want to and tell us why. What was the ultimate? Like, give me 2-3 reasons as to why they were the company you chose.
Sure. So Machine Logic and Dan Jackson were the winners of the contract, and Dan led the sale, number one, right from the get-go. So he's the first person I talked to, set up the meeting. It might have been an admin or something that set up the meeting, but I think it was actually Dan. And he spent a tremendous amount of time with me getting me comfortable, right? And I don't think a lot of it was fun. I will say that I felt bad in a lot of ways in that I think that some of the MSPs were like, I don't want to work for this guy because I knew too much about the back end. I think that once you come out the other side and understand that I understand margins, and I want to make sure you get paid the right amounts and all that stuff, that it's going to be very, very good, right? But I think initially I kind of probably scared some people admittedly, but and then some of that I needed to readjust, my approach too. But Dan, right from the start, just took me through everything and paid a lot of attention to detail. And I think the devil is in the details. When you're hiring somebody to take that level of responsibility for your company, not only do I need to take it seriously, they needed to, and they understood the gravity of the situation. They understood that a mistake on their part could put my company out of business, and then put 200 plus people out of jobs, and then their kids are starving and dying because they can't be fed, right? And so you need to understand that as MSP, right? That is your level of responsibility, damn it, and you need to take that seriously. And I think that they got that. And especially today, I don't think that 5 years ago or 10 years ago, our responsibility was at the same level it is today, but it's gotten higher. Maybe maybe you all need to raise your prices because your level of responsibility is higher. It is. And you need to take it more serious than I think we did 10 years ago. But these guys seem to get that. And I like that. I love the automation they had. So for me, when I onboard an employee, I want that shit to be automated. I don't even have to think about it. So I want HR to key in the damn new hire. I want it to feed some system, create all the accounts, autopilot the thing, order a laptop from Dell, and then poof, and there you go, right? And that's Machine Logic has that. And I'll tell you what, that cost them a lot of money. They worked their asses off to get that, and that speaks volumes to the type of company they are. And so I love that about them, and we're going to use that. It's not in place yet, but we just, they technically take over the first this Monday, but that's how much work they've done on the front end of onboarding. It's been a month of onboarding. And we just went through our trainings the last couple of days. But I'll tell you what, Dan was in every single training. Dan came out to our facility and met with my entire executive team, who's not an easy crowd. And it's those little things, I think, that are big difference makers that end up generating a long-term contract, lifetime customer value, and good profitability, and a happy customer. And there's no substitute for that. And I think they have a good equation for that. So whatever they're doing, I think that if you emulate them, you might do pretty well.
Awesome. So ask Nathan Taylor to put his contact information in here. He was actually a speaker last year for us. I'm high. I really, I think highly of them. I think they got to talk to them, ask them, partner with them. Heck, the cool thing about this is we have a little bit of co-opetition. Sometimes we can't, necessarily work in some geographies. We'll get somebody that you can work with, there. Really appreciate it. So Jerod, thank you so much here. I've got a few things to cover here on my final thoughts, but this has been amazing. Just having you from two different perspectives, really like, holy smokes. And I hope everybody here got some stuff to take away from it, right? Is what you can do. So, what I'm going to do, I just want to give my final thoughts here, my final thoughts. And what we're going to do, actually, we're going to raffle off, okay, one project lead gen for one lucky MSP today. The value is $3,000. That's what we typically charge for these things. We're going to be bringing you 36 leads. We're going to put you in one of three platforms. Either it's the Azure VM and Compute platform, which is doing very well. VM and Compute with Sentinel. We're getting leads like no one's business. We have the Power Platform one, and we also have M365 security with Sentinel again. We're really pushing the whole Sentinel thing here. So we're going to do that. But the final thoughts here, really, I think I hope you're able to leave with the different approach. Maybe take a look at your company. Think about when we talk about Winwire, right? And we're working on the business. Maybe you take today out and you say, okay, everyone in the at the office, we need to go ahead and take a moment. We need to spend 2 to 3 days. Actually, let's tear it down, tear it all down. Find out what the problems are, what the issues, what we can streamline. What are we doing? Have we focused on marketing? Have we tightened up all our messages, tightened up our packages? Are we actually, coming together with great stuff that sets us apart from our competitors, right? And I always talk about this with all the partners we talk with. It's like, hey, how are you different from everybody else? And then they say, well, we're the fastest, we're the quickest. I'm like, you're no different than anybody else. You're just doing the darn, shotgun approach, right, to this. All right, so I hope this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming. And as I always do, it's 11:59. We're landing this plane right on time, right? Because, we all got other things to do. But also, thank you so much for coming today. We really